The X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X-Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X-Zone comes to you live and around the world from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada on the Talkstar Radio Network, X-Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, Star Cable, and our many broadcast affiliates right across Canada, the United States, Central America, the Caribbean, South America, the Pacific Rim, Asia, India, Africa, and Europe. Worldwide toll-free, 1-800-610-7035 is our telephone number. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. And on MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. And to read the X Chronicles newspaper online, www.xchronicles-newspaper.com/newspaperstand.htm. This hour, we're going to be speaking to Paul Simpson, and Paul has a new book out entitled That's What They Want You to Think. It's published by Zero Press. And Paul is a freelance editor and writer. He is the author of many books on pulp culture, including the official books charting the making of Farscape, Smallville, and The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, as well as the Bond Files and a biography on Nicole Kidman. He edits the very popular news and reviews website, sci-fi-bulletin.com. Joining me now is Paul Simpson. And Paul, welcome back to the X-Zone. Great having you with us again.
You're very welcome.
Tell me, Paul, every time, people hear your name, there's only one question that comes to mind. Are you a government stooge?
No, I'm not. The nearest I've come to any involvement with the government either side of the Atlantic, apart from paying tax, is that my father worked for the pensions department in our civil service here. I've not ever worked for the government myself, been hired by them in disinformation or anything like that. So no, I am, as far as anybody can be, objective.
Paul, why do you think there's been such a growth in the conspiracy theories over the last 20 years or so?
Well, I think it coincides with the development of the World Wide Web. Suddenly everybody can make their voice heard, whether it's on a show like yours, whether it's on their own blog or their own website, that everybody now doesn't have to go through a process of editorial control. There is a direct link between everybody and everybody else. It doesn't go through various different sieves, for want of a better word.
But because there is the lack of editorial control, isn't there a lot of garbage on the internet that if there were any controls in place, the garbage wouldn't be there?
That you're getting into questions of free speech here. I think that everybody is entitled to their opinion, no matter how stupid it is. Or what you or I may think is completely off the wall, somebody else thinks is totally sane.
But you know what, Paul? As a professional broadcaster, we have standards that we have to comply by. We're not a blog or radio station where we pay to have our show on the internet. We have rules and regulations that are set forward by the CRTC and the Canadian Association of Broadcasters in the States through our affiliates, the FCC. So why shouldn't people on the blog be also responsible for what they say, what they do, and what they print on the web?
I think they should be, but who would take on that job of monitoring it? I think you're asking If somebody's monitoring it, it means that they are setting up a set of principles that have got to apply to everybody.
Oh, and
the thing about your station or something like that, people have a choice whether to listen or not,
That's
and they
right.
know that your station is regulated, as you say, by FCC and
But,
relevant.
people have the same, they also have the same ability on the internet. If they don't want to read a website, all they have to do is go and change websites. And, Paul, we've got to take our commercial break, but I'd just like to leave the X-Zone Nation with one thought. I believe that the internet is the greatest septic tank that has ever been created by mankind. I'll be back on the other side of this break with Paul Simpson. Don't go away. Take a step back in time and discover old Florida cuisine at Marsh Landing Restaurant in Fellsmere. Enjoy delicacies such as frog legs, gator tail, catfish, and swamp cabbage, or enjoy the more traditional cuisine like hand-cut Angus steaks, ribs, and seafood. Join us for breakfast with a southern flair featuring sweet potato pancakes, biscuits and gravy, and much more. Planning a party? Marsh Landing's private dining room can accommodate groups from 8 to 80 people. While you're visiting, enjoy the historic pictures, artifacts, and stories that line the walls. Marsh Landing is truly a unique experience. Marsh Landing Restaurant, 44 North Broadway in historic Fellsmere, or visit marshlandingrestaurant.com. Marsh Landing, Old Florida cuisine at its best. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone broadcast network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. And welcome back, X-Zone Nation. Paul Simpson is my special guest. His website is www.scifibulletin.com. So, Paul, let me ask you, are you a skeptic or are you a believer?
I'm somewhere between the two. It depends on the theory that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that I went into the book project with the agreements of my editor that I could be, that I wasn't coming in with either I am going to believe everything.
Right.
I'm not Fox Mulder, nor am I Dana Scully. I'm not going to disbelieve everything no matter what the evidence is in front of my eyes.
In your opinion, Paul, what is the number one conspiracy out there today?
I suspect it's still Kennedy.
Really?
50 years on, we still don't have all the answers. There's still a lot of information that's being kept from the world, let alone the American public. And I suspect that within our lifetime, we'll see evidence released that will change every theory that's out there at the moment.
Do we really need to know what is behind the Kennedy assassination if we're not members of the United States?
No. To be perfectly honest, no. I think that the majority of these theories we don't need to know, but that it's part of human nature to want to know.
Yeah, we're kind of a nosy bunch, aren't we?
Humans. We are. We are. It's part of it. It's what you encourage in your children when they grow up. I've got a 10-year-old daughter, and I always want her to ask why.
Sure.
Not 500 times in a minute,
Yeah.
but, that's how you learn. And some people's minds just naturally go to the... I think some people are naturally mistrustful of government. They're mistrustful of authority. And so if the government says something is black, there are going to be people who say it's not, it's white, out of sheer ordinariness, if nothing else.
But when it comes to the Kennedy assassination and so many of the other conspiracies that are out there, I look at them and say, my God, don't you people have anything better to do with your time? Like, there's so much you can do, but when it comes to a conspiracy, the Kennedy assassination, Roswell, Oh, give it a break. If you haven't found anything out by now, the chances of finding anything out are next to none.
You say that, but one of the interesting things when I was researching this was the assassination of Bobby Kennedy in '68.
Yeah.
And audio evidence based on the a tape that was recently, I think about 5 years ago now, analysed with equipment that we've got now, showed that there were 13 shots fired in that kitchen.
But who did that analysis?
It was a professor, I can't remember the name of the chap, it's in the book, but it was somebody who was asked to do it by the person who had the tape.
But it wasn't an official source. So how do we know that this professor, who is a professor, big deal, how do we know that he didn't goof up somewhere and that there was a problem with the tape?
We don't. And I think that every conspiracy theory, every belief system has to run on faith. Whether you're talking religion, whether you're talking conspiracy theories, whatever it is.
But where do you draw the line between faith and sheer stupidity?
Now that's that's a very good question, and I suspect everybody draws that line in a separate place.
Yeah. Look at Roswell, New Mexico. Okay, yeah. I remember 20 years ago when I first started this show that the same players were saying the same thing as they are today, except people like Kevin Randall are saying, you know what, we're taking a second look at Roswell because it may not have anything to do with aliens, outer spacecraft, or extraterrestrials. New evidence has come to light where it could be, and all the evidence that we're seeing now is pointing to a terrestrial vehicle.
Oh, the amount of stuff that's been declassified regarding what was going on at Groom Lake, Area 51, definitely indicates that some of the stuff connected to Roswell, and certainly lots of UFO sightings in the 50s and 60s, were craft that were being tested and monitored and whatever. I think that with all of these things, all you can do, and that's what they want you to think, is it's a snapshot of where theories are nowadays. Going to the last one in the book, President Obama's birth certificate. When I finished the manuscript last summer, they hadn't released the certificate. So the chapter between delivering the manuscript and when we went to print, I had to rewrite virtually top to bottom because of the new evidence that was released. Dr. David Kelly, the scientist who took his own life over here, with regards to the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and the evidence in his case, that changed during that same period. If I was writing the book now, I suspect I'd have to go into every single case in there to check that I'm looking at the most up-to-date versions of the facts. And you're right, they're versions of the facts. They're not the facts, they're versions of them.
Do you cover the Phoenix Lights in your book by any chance?
No, I don't.
You don't, eh? Do you have a personal opinion on that phenomenon?
Not particularly, because I tend to, what I've tried to do with anything like that, and there are other theories that we didn't look at, was I try not to talk about stuff that I don't know what I'm talking about.
All right, and you know what? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you.
No problem at all. I mean, there are certain things that I would be, that I knew about beforehand, and I'd have an opinion on.
Well, I appreciate.
That's not something I know that well.
I appreciate your honesty, and I apologize for putting you on the spot there. Tell me, this is something I do know that you have in your book, is Princess Diana.
Yes.
I being here in Canada, am a great fan of the royal family. And I remember staying up and watching the events as they unfolded, watching CNN. I had just come in from a late night audio shift that I was working at 610 CKTB, and I turned on the TV with a nice can of bubbly, and bang, there was the news. And I'll tell you something, it shook up a lot of people on both sides of the Atlantic. And what is the truth, or what have you uncovered? What is the present-day snapshot of the events pertaining to Princess Di?
A drunk was driving a car too fast through a Paris underpass and hit a concrete pillar.
Is there anything beyond that conspiracy? Was the royal
Not
family
that
involved?
I have found. I read through the Paget report, which is the very, very incredibly detailed investigation that's carried out over here, which is, I think it's about 1,200, 1,300 pages.
Wow.
But it's available as a PDF on the internet. You can download it and you can read it for yourself. And they and their investigators looked at everything, every single theory that Dodi Al-Fayed's father, Mohammed Al-Fayed, raised, no matter how insane it was. I don't think they investigated aliens, but, darn near everything else. But, and they spent a small fortune doing it. They came to the conclusion that it was a drunk driving a car too fast.
You see, this is
and they weren't wearing seatbelts.
Oh.
There's a lot of factors. If it had been a conspiracy, there's a comedy show over here on the radio that really nailed this accurately. But basically, they went through all the events that would have to be set up in order for this to be a conspiracy. And you had to have people changing their minds. You had to have hotel staff suddenly saying one thing. You had to, there was something like 15 or 16 different things. All had to go in a random way for it to have been a conspiracy. It just doesn't add up. It looks like a duck, walks like a duck, it's a duck.
That's right. See, this is one of the great parts of the internet that I do love is, as you said, it's available on the internet in PDF. Download it and read it yourself. See,
I think that was the greatest thing about writing this book was that most people in previous times, and some of the great conspiracy writers like Gerald Posner and people like that, didn't necessarily have access to the primary source evidence.
Right.
Now we do. In the case of Dr. Martin Luther King, the library down in Memphis, the police down there, had scanned and put up every single piece of evidence that the FBI gained.
Wow.
So you can actually look at exactly what every single report said. Now, that is information that just wasn't available to people 5-10 years ago. And when you've got access to that, you're no longer assessing other people's opinions, you're assessing the evidence. And that was one of the things that certainly Dr. King's assassination was one of those that I did change my own thoughts on during the research process. I honestly thought, based on the way that the King family has talked about James Earl Ray and various other factors, that chances were he wasn't involved. But there's a killer piece of evidence, if you'll pardon the bad pun, in the documentation from the FBI. Which is in the book, but...
I'm just sitting here going through my mind of how many of the events that I've watched on television have turned into conspiracies. I remember the Kennedy assassination. I remember watching Senator Kennedy get assassinated with my uncle. Like we talked a few minutes ago, Princess Di. But then there was the one that shook the world, 9/11.
Yes. Well, that was a conspiracy. Well, one of the best lines in a book about 9/11, which was actually, I think, from one of the doubters, was there is absolutely no question that there was conspiracy. It's just a question of whose conspiracy do you believe in? Was it Al-Qaeda's conspiracy or was it the U.S. government's? But either way round, it's a conspiracy.
Let's talk about 9/11 when we come back from this commercial break, Paul. Thanks very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here tonight on the X-Zone. It's always a great pleasure talking to you. X-Zone Nation, Paul Simpson is my special guest. www.scifibulletin.com. That's www.scifibulletin.com. And the name of his book is That's What They Want You to Think. And Paul Simpson and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news and some words from our fine sponsors right here in the X-Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our studios in beautiful Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Once again, our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, you can always chat with us here in the studio. xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And the X Chronicles newspaper. Everybody loves going there and reading those free papers. www.xchronicles-newspaperstand.com.htm. My name's Rob McConnell.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. And welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. Paul Simpson is my special guest for this hour. His website is www.scifibulletin.com. And Paul is a freelance editor and writer. He is the author of many books on pop culture, including the official books charting the making of Farscape, Smallville, and The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, as well as The Bond Files and the biography of Nicole Kidman. He edits the very popular news and reviews website, scifibulletin.com. Paul, before we went to the commercial break, we started to chat about 9/11. What is the snapshot conspiracies when it comes to 9/11?
Well, there are two basically. There is the what we might call the believers, which is that Al Qaeda and Osama bin Laden were responsible for it, and then there are the other side, which the skeptics who believe that the towers were brought down by either the U.S. government for reasons never adequately explained, or something else happened there, but it wasn't actually Al Qaeda. It was done perhaps to justify a war in the Middle East.
When it comes to the conspiracy theory that it was to justify a war in the Middle East, wouldn't it, let's say hypothetically, that was the reason, couldn't the government have done it in a different way instead of taking out nearly, 4,000 people?
Oh, there are those who believe that nobody died. There are quite genuinely people out there who think that the towers were empty.
Well, I've got news for those people. I lost a relative in that disaster, and I know for a fact they're dead. So where do these yahoos get their train of thoughts from? Do they wear tinfoil on their heads and think the aliens are looking at them? Where do they think?
Because I think it's just that it may even be that some people just cannot grasp that this sort of thing can happen. Therefore, it didn't.
Boy, they need to get a life.
Well, quite possibly, but I'm not going to say that about potential readers.
Well, I'm saying that about potential listeners, and I believe in calling a spade a spade. Like, these people are nuts.
No, I think there are probably more insane theories about 9/11 than there are about anything else, with, again, the possible exception of JFK. The thing about the 9/11 is that people will latch on to one piece of evidence which doesn't necessarily tally with everything else that's being said. Newsflash, that's what life is like.
Yes.
It's not a pretty picture. Things don't always go together, and bad things happen.
We could actually put a spin on every news item that ever comes up and actually turning it from a news report to a conspiracy theory.
Yeah. Yes, if the government's involved, there are people who genuinely do that. I worked with somebody a few years back who, when he knew I was writing this book, started explaining to me exactly how the US government had done 9/11. and he couldn't quite understand why I was laughing down the phone at him.
Well, I've got to tell you something. I've got a neighbor who lives a couple of doors down from me, and he's sat in on the show a few times. He's convinced that it was a U.S. submarine that shot a torpedo at the oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico that exploded.
In the middle of New York?
No. In the Gulf of Mexico, the oil rig that exploded.
Oh, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yes,
He's convinced.
9/11, yeah.
No. He's convinced that 9/11 was a way to get into the war, but he's also convinced that the oil rig, the BP oil rig, was blown up by an American submarine to control the price of oil. Like, come on, give your head a shake.
Yes, you're right. You've said a couple of times, these people should get a life. Maybe the problem is that they don't have other, things to focus on. And like anybody, if you're in a small box, I mean, it's like when you're ill and you're, you're slightly feverish, and your mind latches onto something at 3 a.m, and you magnify it up into, it's the end of the world.
Exactly.
This is, an extended version of that, I guess. There are people. Some conspiracies. The problem is that the conspiracies do happen. There was a conspiracy to shoot President Lincoln.
Yes.
For instance. There were conspiracies to assassinate Hitler.
Yeah.
So if you sort of blanket say these things don't happen, well, actually, they do.
I asked a good friend of mine who does a talk show in the States why Americans love a conspiracy. And do you know what he told me?
Mm-hmm.
Because our country was founded on a conspiracy.
It's a decent theory.
Yeah. But, and then again,
it's absolutely right. I mean, in that respect, any revolution is. The problem is that nowadays, or not nowadays, that's not fair, but certainly it's one thing that's come up in the research I'm doing for my latest book. In the 50s, 60s, and early 70s, the CIA were fomenting revolutions.
Mm-hmm.
The conspiracy theories about Cuba, about all of these places. They're not conspiracy theories; they're genuine.
Well, we know for a fact that the CIA was mandated to try and cause a fall in the Cuban government with the Bay of Pigs that backfired.
That's putting it mildly.
Yeah, well, it's a family show, so I've got to watch what I say. But let me ask you this, my friend. What makes your book different from the thousands upon thousands of other books that are out there?
I didn't come into it with an agenda. And I think that really is what sets it apart, is that I came in with the mandate from my publishers and my editor to examine the facts, not to find the facts that fit a theory.
So basically, this is a forensic book on conspiracies.
Yes, you're using the word forensic in a loose sense rather than in its scientific sense. It's not. I don't examine it. I've got 3,000, 4,000 words on each of the theories. I haven't got the space to analyse the evidence in the way that perhaps that other people have done. I have. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, for want of a better phrase, in terms of, I have looked at research that other people have done into the sources. I have, where I can, read the source material myself. I'm certainly on Diana, on David Kelly, ones where material is available, Dr. Martin Luther King. I have gone in and I've formed my opinion based on the facts that I have, that I have seen. But what I haven't done is said, right, man didn't go to the moon, therefore everything NASA says is rubbish, therefore I am going to believe that is this, that, and the other. There's a little bit, a show that I wasn't aware of until I started working on this, and perhaps I should have been, only because it's great fun. It's the TV show Mythbusters.
Oh, yeah.
And they actually did a special on the moon landing.
Yeah, I know. I saw they did a great job on that.
They did, and I've actually quoted. I mean, there's the footnotes start becoming quite comic at one point because it's just Mythbusters again. Yep, see Mythbusters. Why don't you just go and watch the episode? Or it certainly said in the original. I think that may have got toned down by the copy editor. But basically, what the guys did on that was that they duplicated as best you can the situation and came up with virtually identical to what people were saying was fake. And it's great when you actually see that being done. I sort of did a similar thing with Dr. Kelly, who, in my view, took his own life in an Oxfordshire wood back in 2003. I actually went to the village where he lived, and I walked from the end of the drive of his house to the place where he killed himself. And by the sheer physicality of doing that, knocked something like 2/3 of the theories on the head, because people were saying, oh, he was knocked out by Iraqi security, he was knocked out by MI5, he was knocked out by MI6, he was dragged off this, that, and the other. No, that's like saying it could happen in the middle of Yonge Street in Toronto, right in the middle there, standing there, that this sort of thing would happen. No, there are too many people around who would have seen. It's just what these things aren't feasible, but people don't check their facts, and maybe that's one of the key things is with every conspiracy theory where people are coming at it from a specific angle. Inconvenient facts get ignored.
All right, besides Dr. Kelly, are there those theories that you've totally discounted now that you've had the opportunity to examine the evidence?
I think back to Dr. King again, that's one that I very definitely changed my mind on from that. My opinions were reinforced on Pope John Paul II.
Yes.
That was one of the first theories that I was interested in when the David Yallop's book In God's Name first came out, and then reading his updated version and seeing the further evidence that he'd found for that sort of reinforced my view. There were ones that I didn't know one way or the other on, but the President Obama's birth certificate I always thought was probably nonsense. But
sure.
What's come out subsequently, in my mind, proves that the theories were nonsense, even if they're being promulgated by people of the stature of Donald Trump.
Exactly. Like this was, in my opinion, this was another grandstanding way that Trump got media attention.
Well, the best things that could have happened as far as I was concerned in the book, because when I was reading that, to me, and I stress this is my personal read on it, I always felt there was a racist element to it.
Exactly.
But one of the things that we agreed going in, because this was one of the theories that my editor asked me to incorporate, I said I'm not going to make it a race issue, because I don't think that's the job of this sort of book. And then I think it was Whoopi Goldberg turned around and basically said to Donald Trump, are you doing this because he's black?
Yep.
I thought, great, somebody's actually come out and said it.
That's right. And
that's what we started the chapter with, because you can get that straight out there and get that out of the way.
If Donald Trump would have stuck to his guns, ran for the president of the United States, and tried to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt what he was saying was true, that's one thing. But what he did was he caused a bit of a hoopla. He got into a little bit of 15 minutes more of media. And then he just kind of cowered, backed right out.
Yeah. Well, most people, put up or shut up. Most people will actually shut up unless they are absolutely convinced.
Hey, tell me something. Do you think Big Brother is watching us?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do I think that the government surveillance? Do I think Big Brother in the Winston Smith 1984 sense? No, not as. I don't think governments are that organised. Yeah. Do I think that we're in a surveillance society? Yes. I got taken to task recently on Facebook. There's a Canadian author of whom I'm sure you know, Rob Sawyer.
Oh yeah.
And he was talking about the fact that his recent Wake, Watch, Wonder trilogy talks about surveillance, and he was lamenting the fact that some people hadn't realised that everything that he had said in the book actually was being done in North America at the moment. And I said, well, and I didn't think it was as bad here in Britain, and I got taken to task by somebody with some facts and figures on that. And yes, you look at shows like NCIS
yep.
or whatever, where you just take it for granted that McGee or Abbey can just go, right, well, he's on that close, we can get that monitor from there and that monitor, and then he's walking down the street there, and then, it's a bad thing in the show where that somebody's in a blind spot from the cameras.
Yeah. And
And you go, hang on a second.
It goes back further than that. When the very first Social Security number was given out, or the very first passport was given out, that is when it all started.
Taxation.
Well,
you can go right back. Governments need to have an idea of the number of people and the abilities of those people in order to function properly.
Yep.
You can't operate an economy without knowing how many people there are of working ability, of working age. So you have to have a certain amount of information for a society to function. What you don't need is to know the inside leg measurement or what the person does behind their bedroom door. That's not relevant, and it's where that line is drawn that seems to be getting increasingly more and more and more. I'm just looking down at the headline in the Daily Mail newspaper over here today. Beware the spy in the sky, which is talking about Google and Apple using planes that, and I quote, can film you sunbathing in your back garden.
Kinky.
Good luck to them.
All right, you and I have to take our final break. Paul, please stand by. Great talking to you. Exonation Paul Simpson's our special guest of this hour. His website, www.scifibulletin.com. That's www.scifibulletin.com. And Paul and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break. I'm going to run outside, see if I can see Google or Apple airplanes. I'll flash them. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Whatever you do, don't go away.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
19 Sergeant Central. 19 Sergeant, check. Officers on the scene.
Hi, I'm Larry Lawson, host of Paranormal Stakeout. With over 36 years in law enforcement, I have learned a few things. The most important is the proper gathering and preservation of evidence is vital to putting the bad guy behind bars. It's no different in the world of paranormal investigation. Whether it's the search for the afterlife, cryptozoology, UFOs, and extraterrestrials, how we gather the evidence, preserve that evidence, and present it to a jury of our peers will make the ultimate difference in proving the existence of worlds and entities that are beyond our imagination. Join me, Larry Lawson, every week on Paranormal Stakeout when, along with my guests, we'll take a journey to prove with indisputable evidence what man has struggled to believe for centuries. Go to xzbn.net for the broadcast schedule and check me out at paranormalstakeout.com.
Welcome back, everyone. Paul Simpson is our very special guest of this hour. And we're talking about Paul's new book that's out. It's called That's What They Want You to Think. And his website is www.scifibulletin.com. First of all, Paul, before we go any further, I want to thank you so much for joining us. It's been a great pleasure talking to you. But here's a question I'd like to ask you, Paul. If you were given the opportunity of writing a book on one conspiracy and spending as much time as you need, as well as the resources that were given to you, which one conspiracy would it be?
I think it would probably be did we go to the moon or not? Did NASA fake the moon landings? There's just so much good information out there in terms of being able to disprove the theories and being able to do it line by line by line. It's one that has fascinated me ever since there was a fake documentary over here called Alternative 3, which we cover in the book. But that sort of sparked my interest in was it all faked?
So, in your opinion, did NASA fake the moon landing, or was it real?
No.
No.
I absolutely categorically believe that we went to the moon. That those 6 pairs of astronauts stood on the lunar surface and came back. And I think it's a great crying shame that it's not been built on, and that all of us who watched those moon landings
Right.
in the 60s and early 70s fervently, we believe that we'd be on Mars by now, or perhaps moving on beyond.
You see, Paul, this is what I can't understand. All the people who believe that we've had contact with extraterrestrials and the government are working with the extraterrestrials on a hidden agenda. Well, if that is true, wouldn't they have taught us about better propulsion systems and that we'd be further ahead in the space program than we are now?
I think people who believe that think that we are further ahead. And and to a very small extent, they've got a point. We never do know about exactly what the state of the art is in that sort of scientific advance. The computers that you and I are using now are 3 to 4 years behind what the military have.
Yeah.
That's just the way it goes. We were talking earlier about Groom Lake and Area 51 and the various projects that went on there. Yeah, fine. We now know about them now. We don't know what their equivalents are that are going on.
Isn't that true?
It may be that there's something. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me in the least if, there was something in the papers last week, the week before, about a spy satellite that's being repurposed to, is being turned around, so it's now going to be looking out at the galaxy. I didn't see all the details because it was when I was actually in Vancouver. But basically, there's stuff up there in orbit that is still incredibly classified and is incredibly powerful. So, yeah, maybe we are in contact with aliens. It wouldn't surprise me. I think it's very, very arrogant to say that we are the only pseudo-intelligent life form in the universe.
Hey, Paul, I've got some bad news, pal. We've run out of time for tonight, but I want to thank you so much, Paul. We're going to have you back on in the near future so you and I can discuss more of these conspiracy theories. Thank you very much for joining us, and take care, my friend.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye. X-Zone Nation, Paul Simpson has been my guest this hour. www.scifibulletin.com, and Paul has a new book out called That's What They Want You to Think. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news at 6.5 minutes past the hour as we continue here in the X-Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell. Don't go away.